The market is very green today. We can see a bunch of altcoins are putting in massive gains as there's been some big news out of the Trump camp surrounding tariffs that we need to discuss today. We're seeing a lot of short squeezes across the market, which is a phenomenon that I discussed 4 days ago on the channel, because a lot of alts which have been heavily shorted are now starting to pump quite aggressively as short sellers are either being forced to close their positions or they are being liquidated. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about exactly what I am doing right now, what the latest news regarding tariffs means for the market, and what I think is going to happen to the markets over the next couple of weeks in light of this information. If you do enjoy market updates like this, make sure to smash that subscribe button down below and click that post notification bell, because I'll be keeping you up to date with all the latest developments as this plays out ahead of a major day on April 2nd, which we are going to discuss today. All right, so taking a quick scan across markets, we can see that markets are heavily green across the daily and across the weekly. Obviously, this is because many alts were heavily beaten down. That's something that I discussed in my show 4 days ago, so it's only natural to see some squeezes across the market. But this is being exaggerated by the latest news that we got regarding Trump's tariffs, which are set to go live on April 2nd. And this is delivering a little bit more of a spot bid for markets, which are resulting in prices climbing even higher. So what you need to know is that on April 2nd, there is something called Liberation Day, where Trump is set to officially announce his tariffs, where he's going to be unveiling so-called reciprocal tariffs he sees as retribution for tariffs and other barriers from other countries, including longtime US allies. While the announcement would remain a very significant expansion of US tariffs, it's shaping up as a more focused than the sprawling, fully global effort Trump has otherwise mused about, officials familiar with the matter say. So this is why the equities futures are up and are likely to open green today on market open, because of the slight shift in the expectations for the tariff. So what we are now going to likely see, based on this latest report that came out, is a more focused tariff effort as opposed to a super widespread effort, which basically means the effect that tariffs are going to have could be more muted than previously thought. Now, obviously on April 2nd, this is when we're going to get the full details, and that is likely going to be one of the biggest events of the year from a macro point of view. So for markets, for crypto, that's going to be a major event, but obviously the markets are being slightly buoyed by the fact that the tariffs might not be as bad as first thought, and that's why we are seeing a relief rally of sorts across markets. Trump will announce widespread reciprocal tariffs on nations or blocks, but is set to exclude some. And as of now, the administration is not planning separate sectoral specific tariffs to be unveiled at the same event as Trump has once teased. So overall, this is a positive development for markets, which is seeing markets rally. I'm going to go through Fabian's post, who's our head macro analyst in the Miles High Club Discord community, because I think this sums things up really nicely. This was the market update that he gave us this morning. He says equity futures are in the green after receiving headlines that Trump may scale back on the initial tariff implementation next week. April 2nd remains the key date to watch. I think as long as Trump doesn't walk back on the headlines that we just got, equities have a strong case to rally into the end of the month as prospects of smaller than expected tariffs and end of quarter rebalancing effects. I do not believe equities are in the clear yet, and they still face lots of uncertainty across a multi-month time frame. However, more relief is warranted at first, in my opinion. And I would agree with Fabian, and that's something I'll talk about later today in terms of how I am positioning for the next week or so potentially being green and offering the market much needed relief. Fabian continues, there aren't a lot of macro events this week that I see as having high potential to disrupt markets despite some important releases. Global PMIs on Monday, US GDP on Thursday. Of course, I'll be keeping up to date with all of this stuff in these market updates, so make sure you click that post notification bell. Obviously, if you're in MHC, you get all of this info straight away. And the PCE report on Friday are the biggest events to watch for volatility this week, but would need to result in major negative surprises versus consensus to materially affect markets. As for Bitcoin, it is correlated to TradFi risk appetite and will be supported by a continued relief rally in equities. I'm going to chart Bitcoin in a minute for you. However, I still worry that it may exhibit weaker beta from here and will face resistance on the underside retest of the low 90K area, which we'll discuss. I will have to treat this bounce as a counter-trend rally until proven otherwise, meaning I may look to reduce exposure to recent buys as they approach key resistance levels. We're also going to go through all the key resistance levels across the market. So that is Fabian's take. I think that sums it up pretty well, that we are likely going to see some short-term relief, although the long-term structural impact on the market is not clear yet, unless we had a major surprise on April 2nd. I also want to go through Alex Kruger's post because this adds even more nuance. He's one of my favorite macro analysts because he highlights the importance of April 2nd, and then we'll get into all the charts and how I'm trading things. So Alex says, market views update. Markets crawl higher if headlines remain neutral to benign this week, then freeze as we await April 2nd, which is Reciprocal Tariffs Day announcement, or as Trump called it, Liberation Day. April 2nd is similar to election night. It's the biggest event of the year by an order of magnitude. 10 times more important than any FOMC, which is a lot, and anything can happen. Trump could go soft, in which case markets would rally fast and furiously, or could go halfway, adding uncertainty on timelines, in which case markets would take out all the stops of all longs and shorts, or go all out, in which case markets could easily crash another 10 to 15% fast. In the worst case scenario, things would hit the fan and tariffs would start coming off as Trump negotiates hard in the following month, in which case peak negativity would hit around the second week of April, which would coincide with US tax day. The US economy is still strong, but will highly likely slow down due to tariffs regardless of the path Trump chooses. But every economist already expects a very sharp economic slowdown into year end, which means it's largely already priced in. Either way, you all want to be prepared and ready to act on Libertarian Day. It will be big. It's going to be a massive, massive day for crypto. I'll keep you updated as all of the developments start to unfold. But as Alex points out, it's probably a much more important event than any FOMC, and it's probably just as important for markets as the election night itself was. And that's because whatever Trump does significantly changes the economic landscape of the US for potentially years, and thus markets are going to start pricing that all in real time, which makes it a major event. But due to the headlines that we did get about a potential softening stance in terms of tariffs, the markets are rallying quite nicely today. And that's something that I want to discuss now because I generally do agree with Fabian. I think although this isn't a structural shift to the market, longer term, in the shorter term, it definitely puts the market in the clear for a continued relief rally and continued short squeezes, which we discussed 4 days ago on the channel, which continue to happen across the market, thus opening up lots of opportunities for you right now to not only trade, but also to tweak your portfolio positioning. I'll go through some of the moves that I'm making in terms of actually utilizing this pump to my benefit. Then on April 2nd, that will dictate what price action looks like for the next period after that. But I am taking a bit of a shorter term approach right now, trying not to get stuck in the middle ground. What do I mean by that? Well, I did a tweet that I'll find now earlier today, which basically says, I like to avoid medium-term trades in crypto. I find it much easier to succeed at long-term, 12 to 24-month time horizon trades, or conversely, super short-term trades. I struggle the most with 6-month-ish trades. Too many variables arise within that time frame. So most of my good trades in the market, generally speaking, are either short-term or long-term. I think where people get a little bit lost in the markets is the medium-term trading. For example, this tariff news comes out, markets are adjusting positively, but you start opening 6-month, 3-month altcoin trades based on the news, which could easily shift on April 2nd. So right now, this is maybe good for the markets in the short term, so trade things short term and keep your long-term portfolio entirely separate. So what I'm really trying to do at the moment is separate my short-term trading, the reclaim setups that we're about to go through, any sort of short-term trade pertaining to news. I try to separate that from my very long-term portfolio, which is based on the trends that, let's say, over a 12 to 24-month period, I think are likely to play out. I think a lot of the fundamental narratives in crypto, like AI crypto, RWA, these things are going to play out over the much longer term. So I'm more comfortable holding some of my bets into the long term and then play the short term trading game very separately from that. So you can see on the charts, we are starting to get a lot of these squeezes, which are taking prices, especially on alts that have been heavily beaten down or heavily shorted, back up, in some cases above key high time frame levels where we're seeing reclaims. So FARTCOIN was a coin that I pointed out in my show 4 days ago as an altcoin with good squeeze potential, and this setup started to play out. We saw the flip of the 37 zone, which took us back above the money noodle and back above the high time frame resistance level, and now it's sitting at 56 cents, roughly 40% up from the time of that video. And it's not just FARTCOIN, there are many setups in the market which are looking similar, where you have alts starting to break these key reclaim levels. And these open up a lot of technical opportunities in the market, especially as you see continued squeezes across the market, which in my opinion are going to continue for the next 1 to 2 weeks, especially if we see a little bit more relief into April 2nd, as long as no headlines are reversed this week, then I think you will see continued squeezes across the market. And I think there is a little bit of risk appetite across the market. Everyone's craving dopamine. Everyone's been bored for a long time. A little bit of fun for a few days does make sense, considering things have been so heavily beaten down and people just want something to believe in again. So what I would suggest doing in terms of preparing for short squeeze setups right now, if you missed that video 5 days ago, is I would create a prospective watch list for coins that fulfill the criteria of being heavily beaten down from sectors that were heavily beaten down, that had extremely negative funding. So create a watch list for coins that have perp listings on major centralized exchanges that are beaten down, especially the ones with key high time frame levels which are about to break, especially on the daily and the weekly. So the setups like the FARTCOIN setup I showed before, we'll go through some setups later, like, this ENA setup, for example. These are good examples of coins that you should add to your watch list. FARTCOIN's already started to play out, but coins that haven't flipped yet, that have been heavily beaten down. A lot of the memes fall into this category. A lot of the AI coins fall into this category. Just compile them all in a trading view list. Then what you want to do is set up your alerts. So have 2 watch lists, your prospective watch list, and then as setups trigger, move them into your active watch lists. These are basically lists where you'll have your active trade setups or trade setups which are about to trigger. And then if you do enter these trades, make sure that you take profits quickly, because these squeezes and these moves happen very quick. But as I mentioned before, it doesn't necessarily indicate a structural shift in the market. So you want to make sure you take advantage of the moves without exposing yourself long-term structurally to the market. So I would be looking to take profits on each major impulse trade. Now in the Discord, we have Paradise posting a lot of these setups. He's our head low time frame trader. You can see he had a nice ENA trade, 183%. He's had a crazy week, by the way. Everyone in MHC has been absolutely printing. That's been trading these. BERA chain, 162%. Many other trades as well. His S trade was up 120%. He has this channel called Chart Ideas as well. I'll kind of leak a few of these, even for non-MHC members now, where he just posts a bunch of setup ideas. So you can see ALCH, you can see an S setup, a PEPE setup. This is exactly what I'm talking about, right? You have a key level here, you have deviation, and you have a potential reclaim play with a 26% move. So in the group, we're trying to catch on the lower time frames, these 20 to 30% squeezes to the upside to make some quick money this week. And that's definitely been the case over the last 4 days since I made that video. A Curve, there's an interesting setup. ENA, there's a setup. SPX, there's a setup. Lots of these memes are now starting to reverse. Just keep in mind, this is short-term stuff. I'm not saying longer term, SPX is definitely back. I'm just saying in the short term, there are a lot of good trading setups right now. And as I mentioned before, just try and differentiate your short-term trading from your long-term trading. If you're in Mars High Club, you get all of these setups. And we have a traders hub for you to be able to talk amongst your peers and review setups together, take trades together. And the best traders are being promoted to a channel we have called Talent Analysis, where the strongest traders are now sharing their setups every single day. So you see Drolly sharing a bunch of setups in this group this morning. So this is really cool because if you prove yourself in the Trading Talk channel, you get a place to share your own trades in the Talent Analysis channel. And it just means that there are more potential trade ideas for people. I think the real power of being part of a community, not just Mars High Club, but other dedicated trading communities, is that you get a lot of idea generation. Scrolling through TradingView watch lists on your own can make it a little bit hard to find setups, but when you have the refined alerts coming through, it makes it a lot easier to actually find trade setups and get ideas and bounce those ideas off other people. I genuinely think in crypto, you shouldn't be trying to do it alone. You should be trying to do it with others, whether that's a free group that you want to put together or whether that's a more premium experience like Mars High Club. Being with other like-minded people makes this journey so much more effective as you essentially combine brain power. And during a time like this, it makes it much easier to stay engaged in the market when you're doing it with others. In general, doing business alone, trading alone, doing anything alone is really difficult. We're social creatures. It's much, much, much easier to stick to something long-term if you're doing it with someone else. And that's primarily why I started the Mars High Club. I wanted a community where everyone could do it together. And I'm really, really proud of what we've built. So if you want to check it out, there's a link in the description below. Now let's move on to my general market overview because we're seeing a lot of squeezes. I touched on what you can do to plan for some of these squeezes and obviously tracking a lot of the reclaim plays and taking a technical lens in the shorter term is the way to do that. But what about the slightly longer term lens? Have my opinions changed there? Well, I don't think that on the tariff news alone, my opinions have changed there, but there are some interesting signals that we're getting. Obviously, we had that nice bounce off the money noodle indicator on the weekly, which I discussed a couple of weeks ago as a key level for Bitcoin, aligned in the sound of sorts for Bitcoin. We've seen a nice response to the upside. So this is technically still in a bullish trend. Bitcoin's still technically in a bullish high time frame trend. But if you move on to the slightly lower time frames, we are starting to get some very, very interesting levels right now. You see Bitcoin is pushing up into the money noodle on the daily, but importantly, this horizontal resistance at 90K, which used to be range low support. Now it's range low resistance. So we're coming up into a resistance zone here. If we could actually squeeze above this zone and reclaim, that would be the ultimate bullish setup for Bitcoin, reclaiming strength within this 90K to 100K zone. However, I do think you have to be aware of the fact that this is still a resistance level, so we could face some selling and shorting into that 90K level where potentially we impulse up and then get rejected back down. So if I were in active trades right now, in altcoins, in Bitcoin, as we squeeze closer to 90K, which we definitely could over the next few days, I would look to lock in some profits in that zone, and that's what I'm going to be doing across my portfolio. I'll talk about a few alts in a second here that have good setups. I just want to be very transparent with you though. Even on these alts with good setups, I am taking some profits across the board as prices to continue to move higher, just so I have flexibility on April 2nd to make some moves, because that's going to be a very big day for crypto. So even on setups that look really good, even if they haven't fully played out yet, I am taking some profits, some of which I'm going to be talking about in today's video. Generally speaking, by the way, I have a 24-hour rule when it comes to altcoins on the channel. So if I mention a coin, I don't sell it within 24 hours of mentioning it, unless I specify otherwise, and that's why today I'm specifying otherwise, so we're fully on the same page. Because there are coins in my portfolio, whether it be things like ENA, Hyperliquid, CHEX, ANON. I think all of these have potential to move higher this week, but I want to start DCAing out a little bit just to get some more stables on hand so I could potentially redeploy around April 2nd. The others chart from a high time frame perspective is also very interesting because you see this orange line here is your upwards trend. We've deviated below. This is the second deviation below, but actually reclaimed back above, which is the second time this has happened since August 2024. So this is technically still in an uptrend, although you are facing overhead resistance in this moving average zone, which is around 250 billion. So continued impulse upwards could take us to the middle of that zone where I do expect some potential headwinds, obviously notwithstanding what is announced on April 2nd. So going back to what I said before, it's kind of hard to have very, very medium-term trades at the moment. You can have very long-term trades because it doesn't matter if there's volatility in the short term. And you can have very short-term trades, maybe playing some of the reclaim setups. But the middle ground right now, like that 3 to 6 month time horizon, is a little bit unclear heading into summer, which is typically a pretty choppy period in the market. So generally speaking, I try to avoid having directionality over a time frame that I'm not certain of, if I'm not forced to, which we're not in markets. We're never forced to have a trade. So right now I'm in a lot of short-term positions. I'm in a lot of long-term positions, trying not to be in too many positions with a June, July, August expiry, because I really don't know what's going to happen in the market over summer. But I do have confidence longer term, the trend will be up, and I have confidence in the short-term setup as well. So now let's go through some alts that look good in the short term. ENA, as I mentioned before, has had a nice pivot off the 3-day and the weekly support zone. I think we could definitely be facing a retest of the 46 6-cent level, which is a key reclaim zone that if you're an ENA bull, you really want to see this level reclaimed again, which I think there's a strong chance it does this and then faces some resistance into this moving average here at 57. So I expect balance of probabilities this one to move higher. Another interesting chart I wanted to point out is CHEX. It actually bounced really nicely off that 20-cent zone. So there's nothing to really panic about here. It is heading into resistance at 32, so I'll look to TP as it heads into this zone. But generally speaking, I wanted to point out that it's a positive sign that you have a strong bounce here, and other RWA protocols are starting to look good. Plume's another one that looks really good. If you go on to Bounty Bubbles, you can see that's up 32% this week. As I mentioned, CHEX up 35% this week. Some of these RWA coins are looking quite good, which adds a little bit more validation to that narrative in the shorter term. ANON is a chart that I had to mention today because from a technical perspective, this looks amazing. You have your higher low. We're now having a break of the horizontal resistance level as well as the moving average, which we rejected off twice. If this holds above, I could see it running to the next resistance zone, which is the $10 region. The majority of my position here is a long-term position. So this falls into the category of the coins I was discussing before that I could hold for a year because I think the AI trend will take some time to play out. But in the short term, I am looking at maneuvering my positions around a little bit. You know, might take some profits, then might ladder back in if we get a major dip. You kind of have to also manage your positions a little bit in this market, unless, you know, you're just willing to hold for the long term, which I'm certainly doing with a percentage of my bag here. Same logic goes for ENA, same logic goes for CHEX. I think generally speaking, what to do in the markets is when you have a position, have a percentage of that position which you play around with maybe based on the charts, and then have a percentage of the position which is locked long term if you have a fundamental long term thesis for the coin. So that allows you a bit of freedom to take some profits and set invalidations, but you are also in a structural long term trade to make sure you actually get the desired outcome from that trade. So I think splitting up positions is a good way to actually make sure you're managing your trade whilst being exposed to the upside of that trade. Another chart which looks quite good is Mantle, because we had a reclaim of the previous range high zone, which acted as support for these massive expansions to the upside. I pointed this out a few days ago, but we have seen official confirmation now that we are getting a breakout. I could see this move extending even higher. It's at 84 cents right now, but you have the $1 resistance level, which also marks the top of the money noodle. So I think fundamentally this looks quite strong. And then you also have some news that came out about Trump's World Liberty Finance project adding even more Mantle for its portfolio. So another $3 million of Mantle added to the portfolio. And this comes off the back of the announcement of Mantle Bank, which is basically an on-chain version of Revolut. So Mantle, although technically it's an L2, what I do like about them is the fact that they are branching out into other areas of crypto. They have a pretty expansive ecosystem. Obviously, Mantle Bank being one of the latest products that's being added to that, which is essentially creating a holistic financial ecosystem. So you'll be able to have crypto in your wallet, swap crypto, and have a nice clean interface like, you know, a banking app like Revolut, but on Web3. So I think this kind of stuff can help onboard even more users into crypto. So even technicals aside, there are fundamentals to validate why price is running. And then lastly, I wanted to go through a bunch of alts and look for some trends in the market pertaining to the short squeezes that I mentioned earlier, because there are certain coins which are pumping harder than others. And I can pretty much summarize this into two categories: AI agents and meme coins. So if you look at the strongest performers over the last 24 hours, Freya has gone crazy, ALCH has gone crazy, ARC's gone crazy, GRIFT has gone crazy. These are all AI plays. And then the other plays that are pumping, like SPX, are all the meme coins. So I feel like it's right now AI agents and AI plays and meme coins that are pumping. But AI is definitely the number one right now. And that's because a lot of these AI coins, unlike memes, actually, some of them have really strong fundamentals. They were just so heavily beaten down. And a lot of them that had big exchange listings were heavily shorted. And you're seeing a lot of squeezes. A coin like ANON, which doesn't have many perp listings, if any, this is running based on a pure spot bid. So the ones that don't have any perp listings, but are running, that's actually a really positive sign that you're actually getting a spot bid for these coins. That's even more bullish. For some of the others, you can put it down to short squeezes. Like ANON, you have LMT as well. This is another one that's one of the top gainers today that doesn't have big perp listings. This is a coin that's been heavily short squeezed to the upside. So good to see many coins now starting to have a little bit of relief. Obviously, April 2nd is going to be a big day. So I'm not taking any like medium-term trades as I discussed before, but definitely great opportunities under the framework that I discussed for short-term trading. And obviously our long-term portfolios are completely separate to that, because I think it's important to also have a long-term approach to the market. Have your long-term approach, have your portfolio which you hold over a long time horizon, and then have your shorter-term trading portfolio where you can make money like we have been over the last few days. I will see you in the Mars High Club. I'm about to answer some questions. I have a questions channel and I'm about to chart a bunch of coins. So if you're in there, go check out some of the charts that I am posting today. And I will see you in the next video. Have that notification bell on because I'll keep you updated as the markets unfold over the next couple of weeks. Good to see some volatility coming back to the markets and opening up some more trading opportunities for us. See you later. Peace out.